Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Self-Knowledge course. Today we have the lecture number 28 of the Phase A. Remember that we are seeing the Phase A every Wednesdays and Fridays, and that all the previous lectures of the Phase A are recorded here in the page. And well, today it's turn for us to talk about the Christ. So we are going to learn today what is this force, what is this that we as humanity have really misunderstood, well, due to certain, tercerization of this term. We actually don't really know what the Christ is, and today we are going to try to unveil the real meaning of the Christ. So we are going to see what is the universal Christ and what is the individual Christ. So in this very interesting lecture, we are going to see this in a total different way than the one that we are used to, because we are going today to delve into what is the real meaning of the Christ. And we are going to learn how we can incarnate our individual Christ, because we are going to see that this is a force that is latent in each one of us. And that actually everyone that have incarnated their Christ and that are been named as Christ, because, well, we are going to study all of that today, are there to show us with their lives something that we all can really live, something that we all can really get to achieve. And, well, let's start today's lecture. Well, and let me remind you that if you have any question at any point of the lecture, you can leave your questions there in the chat, and I will be trying to solve any question that you have, okay? And if you see the lecture after the live transmission passed, anyway, you can leave your questions. I will be there checking any question that you have. And if you watch this video in YouTube, you can also leave your questions there, and I will be trying to solve any question in relation to this interesting topic and in relation to all the information that I am giving you through this self-knowledge course. Okay, so let's start by seeing the objective of this lecture, which is to comprehend how to develop our individual Christ so we get to unite ourselves with the universal Christ. But first, let's talk a little about the historical Christ, because, well, it is important that we open our minds to begin to understand this, because it is convenient that we understand better what the Christ is, as throughout the time we have come to know Christ through many dogmas and beliefs that have forcibly pigeonholed Christ into a single master, when in reality the Christ has been present in the different cultures of all times. So the first thing is to understand that the Christ is not a person, but a force of our consciousness that can be incarnated, and that we stop being just satisfied with recalling the merely historical question, because the Christ is a reality from instant to instant, from moment to moment within us. And there have been many masters in all the eras who have incarnated this force. Actually, we can name some of them. For example, in China, the Christ was Fuji. For the Toltecs, it was Quetzalcoatl. Sorry. In Japan, we have Amida as the Christ. For the Greeks, the Christ actually was Heracles or Hercules for the Romans, which is the same. And in fact, the 12 labors of Hercules are related to the inner work, are related to the work of the second and the third mountain of the initiation. And well, for the Egyptians, the Christ was Osiris or Osiris. And for this reason, in the past, when a master achieved the crucifixion, it was said that he became Osirified, because there it was named like the Christ, but the Osiris. And that was, for example, the case of Hermes Trismegistus, which was a master who achieved that level of Christ and was an Osirified. And other examples that we have as Christ, where we can name a Buddha, we can name Krishna, and well, there are just a few. But with this, we can see that before Master Jesus, there had already been Christ in other cultures and eras. And after Master Jesus, there have also been Christ, like, for example, Mohammed or Dante Alighieri, the one of the Divine Comedy. Yeah, he was a self-realized master. He was a Christ. We had also Saint Germain. We have the Count Cagliostro. We have Master Samael. We have Master Rabelais. We have, for example, Joan of Arc, who was a lady, and he was a lady who crucified herself. We have, as a lady, also Saint Teresa of Avila, since not only men can achieve crucifixion, but also women. And they were just people who managed to incarnate their own internal Christ. They were people who made this work of getting to know themselves, of getting to achieve their self-realization, and they, well, like, reach that point of becoming a Christ. Okay, and well, what makes Master Jesus someone special? Because yes, he's someone that we all know. He's like very widely known. And the thing is that he came to fulfill a special mission that must be fulfilled in each race, and that only the highest hierarchy beings can actually fulfill. And that is that in a physical form, that is with their own lives, they come to represent the cosmic drama of the crucifixion, to show with their lives what every initiate must live in their inner world to achieve their own crucifixion. For example, in another race, it was that figure named as Hercules, the one who showed with his life the path of the crucifixion, the path of the second and third mountain. Because when you finish the first mountain of initiation, and we were talking about mountains of initiation in the lecture number 11, remember, when we were talking about how to fabricate soul and spirit. And actually in the lecture of phase B, we talk a lot about that topic of the mountains of initiation. Actually, the crucifixion is the process that the initiate must live in their second and third mountain of the initiation. And with their lives, this special Christ, they show all this process. And for example, well, let's say that there, in every step of the life of an Hercules, for example, or in the life of a Jesus, in each step of their lives, we are going to see the symbolisms or the several things that all people who crucify themselves, who let their inner Christ be born in us and in them, and develop in them, they have to be living in their internal world. Okay, and well, now that we know more or less what is the historical Christ and its function, let's see what is the universal and the individual Christ, so we understand what is that force that Jesus and all these masters incarnated, and that we too, if we do the interior work that is required, we can get to incarnate. And well, let's start talking about the universal Christ. When we are talking about the universal Christ, we must talk about fire. us trying to discover the nature and the essence of fire is trying to discover God, whose real presence has always been like revealed under the fiery appearance. Actually, Christ is fire. He is that fire that can create, that can destroy, and that constantly renews nature. And we can find many relationships between divinity and fire in different cultures, where different cults were rendered to fire. And in this Occidental culture, we see, for example, how God was also related to fire in multiple times. For example, here we see in the Bible the burning bush, or the burning of Sinai, following the granting of the Decalogue. And those are, for example, two manifestations through which God appeared to Moses. And we can see, like, also in the Bible, under the figure of a flame-colored jasper and sardonic being seated on an incandescent and dazzling throne. There, St. John describes the owner of the universe in the Apocalypse. Or, for example, St. Paul used to say in his epistle to the Hebrews, our God is a divine fire. And, well, also the same Master Jesus said that he had come to cast fire on the earth. And Paul said in his letter to the Thessalonians that Christ would reveal himself with his powerful angels in a flame of fire. Then we see that there is an intimate relationship between the manifestation of God and fire. Thus, we see how the universal fire is the creator, is that living and philosophical fire that makes chaotic matter fertile, and that can, as I was saying, create or can destroy according to its law. That is actually what the Christ is. So, the universal Christ is what is known as the army of voice, or the army of the word, which are God's enlightened masters who give light to the universe, who have incarnate the fire, which is the Christ, in themselves, and that through their verb they can manifest this creative or destroying fire. That is the universal Christ. And, well, the sacred absolute Son, from where we all came from, is what is known as the unmanifested God, and this unfolds in the manifested God to create matter. So we see that to create, God, what does is that unfolds himself into the Godfather and God the Mother. Well, let's understand that when we are talking about God, we are talking about gods. We are talking about the union of people, or of self-realized masters who have reached that point of gods. And when a God needs to create, he comes out of the sacred absolute Son, unfolds himself into the two poles, God the Father, God the Mother, which are the positive and the negative force, masculine and feminine. That is why we find the Elohims, or the angels, that are represented as beings who have both sex in them. That is the reason why they are androgynous, because that is a God. A God is a self-realized master, and who have incarnated. Who have integrate in him those two forces. Okay, and to create, they have to unfold into their two poles, and they need to unite sexually, because when you join sexually, there is where the fire, the creative fire starts. Okay, and actually all creation is sexual, and hence the sacredness of sexuality. And when you unite sexually, a third force is born, which is the fire. And in these self-realized masters, when they unite sexually and they start this fire, that fire is the Christ. And that force of the Christ, which is the fire, is the one that has the power to create, to renew, or to destroy. So he creates the atoms, he creates the planets, he creates the galaxies, he creates the universes and all the human beings, which are, sparks that come down to the manifestation, and they take a physical body to learn. So those physical bodies are created with that sexual creative energy, which is the fire that is like transmitted by these gods through their verbs. That is why it is said, like in the same Bible, that everything was created because of the word, because of the verb. Well, in Spanish we talk about the verb. I think in English you translate that, or in the Bible said the word is the same. It's talking about that through the word or the verb everything was created, and they are talking about that word or verb, which is the Christ, which is the fire. And well, each one of those parts that came out from the sacred absolute Son come and take a physical body to learn, and with the mission to awaken their consciousness to return to the sacred absolute Son as individual Christ, to become part of that universal Christ, or to that army of the Word. That is like our purpose, to return having awakened 100% of our consciousness, having become cosma creators that can create, that can destroy with their verb, So that universal Christ is like the union of all the Christ, of all those awakened, self-realized beings of the galaxy who have achieved their Christification. So that is a universal Christ. And well, that beings that make up the universal Christ are all of them conscious beings who decided to be part of the creation, who by, as I was saying, unfolding and uniting sexually, they create the third force, or the third force, which is the fire, starts in them and manifests that fire through the verb to create. And that is the reason why, for example, you see angels that are represented with trumpets, or with swords. Actually, when they are represented with trumpets, that represents the power of manifesting fire through the verb to create using mantras. That is what is being represented there. And the mantra, for example, Om, it is said that resounds in the whole universe, or that the whole universe was created because of the mantra Om. And that when that Om gets to silence, then everything is going to be like destroyed. And that is really representing this process. And when they are represented with swords, the angels is representing the manifestation of the fire in its destructive form. That is why, for example, in ourselves, with our inner fire, which is our sexual energy, we can get to create our internal bodies, but with that same energy, we can get to destroy our psychological defects, because actually that sword with which our Divine Mother eliminates our defects is that sexual creative energy. Okay, and well, we see how the Christ, as understanding this, is the verb, is the logos, is the great word. And we see that as I was saying, that in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, and all things were made through the word, and without him was not anything made that was made. So there you have like the real meaning of that thing of the word. So well, we have here about God's creation, about that theory, and we have heard about the Big Bang theory. And we cannot get to see how both theories are actually speaking of the same thing, about how self-realized beings that inhabit in the seventh dimension, when unfolding, uniting, and creating, that creation came to unfold from dimension to dimension until it reaches this third dimension, and in this point the great explosion that gives rise to the matter occurs. So Big Bang was not an accident, but a work of Christic creation. And that is why it is said that by the word everything was made. And the Christ force is actually contained in everything that is created, because it is what gives life to everything. It is actually in the germ, it is in the seed that generates a new life, and it is in the human being, and it is contained in our own germ, in our seed, in our sexual gonads. There we find our fire. That is why esoterically we heard that it is said the Christic semen, because actually there in our sexual gonads we have that principle of the Christ. And that is why with our sexuality we can actually get to create another living being, because in our sexual seed we have that creative force that is the Christ. And that is why using this energy wisely through the suprasexuality we can get to create ourselves internally, because in that sexual energy is contained that marvelous and powerful creative force which is the Christ. Now we are going to see with this of the cosmic drama that I was saying when talking about Jesus, that this is something that every person who wants to belong to that army of the voice have to do. So I was saying, Master Jesus had the great task of representing this cosmic drama to show us this path, and that is why he said that he was the path, because he came to show us with his life what is the path that the initiate must go through to ascend and to develop their intimate Christ. So represented in Master Jesus' life is everything that the initiate must live within himself. Actually, although Christ is born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, it is no use if he is not born in our hearts as well. And even if he had died and had been risen on the third day from the dead, it is of no use if he is not died and rises in us too. For example, Christmas, which is something that he represented in life, inside us is going to represent that special moment of the birth of our intimate Christ in our hearts. And we, year after year, we are celebrating, for example, Christmas, but that is actually useless if we don't live for at least one time that Christmas of the heart. So Jesus not only incarnated Christ within him, but also represented this to show us with his life the path, which is something very valuable. And all those trials or those sufferings, the pain, the crucifixion, the death, and the resurrection process are just part of all the internal path towards the Christification. It is a hard path, and that is why it is easier just to praise, the Master who achieves it, and gets to believe that he already died for all of our sins. It is like very easy, because that means that one already made the work that we have to do, but we are self-deluding ourselves, because it is not like that at all. He's actually just showing us the way that we need to take, that we need to go and do what he did, that is letting our inner Christ to be born in us, to die in ourselves, which is die to all of our ego, to take our cross, and we are going to be learning what the cross really is in the Phase B lectures, which is something sexual. The cross is something sexual. There you have the phallus or the penis and the uterus there, and that cross form the sexual force in which you can create, in which you can destroy. And we need to die in ourselves to all of our ego, and we need to get to resurrect. That is when we achieve the immortality, when we get to eliminate all of our ego. So all that process that Master Jesus came and showed is the things that we need to live inside ourselves. Okay, so we don't need to just be there praising, praising the Master Jesus, etc. Because with that, we are just feeding our fanaticism. The real thing is to go and do our work to awaken our consciousness to get to develop our individual Christ. And actually, in that cross that we find in the cross, in those letters that are INRI or INRI, that esoterically means, to the outside world, exoterically means, or they said it means, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Yaularuban. I forgot how that is that in Latin, but it's like Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Exoterically, it's like the meaning that people gave it, but actually, esoterically, internally, what these words means is actually ignis natura renovatur integra. That is Latin, in Latin, and that means the fire incessantly renews nature. There, if you see it, it's like the mystery of the Christ in that very word. But this is just like a hidden meaning, as the same it was hidden the sexuality of Jesus. The fact that he made his work to crucifixion with his couple, that was Mary Magdalene, and people think that he was celibate because that was something that was taught for some reason to hide this information from humanity. But actually, that is not the truth. The truth. And all this information you can actually corroborate in the astral world with your own inner being, because it is here. It is not for you to believe or not believe, but we are giving you an information, and I encourage you to go and investigate this information internally. Christ is this. Christ is that fire that incessantly renews nature. The Christic force is that fire that is contained in our sexual energy, and that is why when we get to spill our sexual energy, we are like spilling our Christic force, and we are betraying our inner Christ. And to finish this part of the universal Christ, we need to point this out to get this clear, that the union of all the individual Christ is known as the universal Christ. There is this debate between the monotheism and the polytheism, and actually it is absurd. In the same Bible, in Psalms 82, says that God is in the meeting of gods, and that is because Christ is a perfect multiple unit. So we are going to see now how and where we find the Christ in us, how to develop so we can join that universal Christ, which is God. Okay, and what is the individual Christ? And it is said that temptation is fire, and the triumph over temptation is light. This let us see that our fire is currently trapped and is conditioned by all of our temptations. That is our fire, our Christ is trapped there in all the desires of our ego that we are constantly feeling every day. And when we manage to triumph over each of our temptations, so we deny our desires, we rescue the light. And as Christ is fire, in order to get to incarnate the force of the Christ, we must first release it. And that Christic fire, which is our essence, which represents the spirit, the light, is contained there in our seminal envelope. And it is that 97% of consciousness that is trapped by the ego. So the ego is expressing itself in us daily through our desires. It is that spirit that we feel for doing things or for not doing things. Our spirit is currently conditioned by our ego. So we constantly have courage for things of the ego, for laziness, for, I don't know, be on the social media for hours, to fight. We feel the desire to fight, and we go and do. We feel the desire to masturbate, and we go and do so. We feel the desire to go out and drink, we go and do so. Even to suffer, we have courage, because we start feeling the desire of crying, of feeling like, terrible, and we go and we do it. We don't deny to any of our desires, and that is why we are and that is the way in which we are betraying every day our inner Christ, which is like trapped in all of those desires. And for us to release this Christic force in us, we need to start denying our desires. And well, we see that we have very courage for everything of the ego, but we have almost no spirit for the things of the being, for the things that can lead us to awaken our consciousness. And to start releasing that fire, that spirit, that Christ in us, we must start denying our desires, denying ourselves. The same as Jesus told us, if you want to follow him, you need to deny yourself, take your cross, and follow me. And there he was like referring about these three factors for the consciousness revolution. Deny yourself is deny your desires, eliminate your ego, and take your cross is practicing the supersexuality, and follow him is do what he did. That is sacrificing his life for humanity, which is the sacrifice for humanity. And well, we must know that if we don't refuse our desires, we will forever be slaves of desire. And we will continue repeating the same mistakes once and again from one existence to another. But if we start denying our desires, if we don't give in to temptation, we are going to rescue light, which is wisdom, and we are going to rescue courage, spirit, and then we will begin to have spirit now, but for the things of our being. Spirit to meditate, to eliminate our negative ways of being, to transmute our sexual energy, to start teaching others this knowledge, because when we start this work of eliminating our ego and rescuing this fire that is trapped within our ego, then we will have fire now for the things of the consciousness. And well, as you see, the Christ developed, the individual Christ develops through the three factors for the consciousness revolution that we learned in the lecture number 17. And with this, we are going to be making that this inner Christ get to, at one point, be born in us. And the first thing is to start denying or refusing our desires. And we are going to do so with this first factor, which is to die, or the psychological death. Practicing the self-observation from moment to moment to get to observe all the psychological defects that want to manifest in us, understanding them by judging them. And when we get to understand that it is a defect, not a manifestation of our consciousness, we immediately eliminate that expression of the ego with the help of our Divine Mother. And we release that fire every time that you ask for death, for a detail of your ego. What you do is that you are releasing the essence, which is the fire, and you are rescuing from this the light, and you are recovering the spirit. And with the second factor, which is to be born, we are going to take all that recovered fire and we are going to fuse it in our spinal cord. And we are going to do so by practicing the suprasexuality, by making this fire ascend through our spine. And this fire, when condensing in our spine, is going to be creating our internal bodies, since all creations have a sexual origin. And in this case, when we get to create our first 5 bodies, physical, make it solar; vital, make it solar; create our astral body, from which we only have an embryo of this. We are going to create a full solar astral body. The same with the mental. We are going to create a full solar mental body. And with the causal body, the same. We are going to create a solar mental body. And well, there we are going to have a soul. Then we are going to be like real men. And that we are going to do so with the practice of the spiritual birth. And with the third factor, which is the sacrifice for humanity, what we are going to do is that we are going to start developing love for our inner work and for humanity by giving, this knowledge to everyone in its pure form and for free, so that everyone has the tools to do this work as well. Since one of the main functions of the Christ is to consciously sacrifice himself for humanity so that they may find the path. And we need to follow him to do the same. And that way we are going to be developing in us the Christic force. And when is that Christic force going to be born in us? Well, as I was saying, we are going to start practicing the three factors, and we are going to practice the suprasexuality. We are going to achieve chastity, so that is never reaching orgasm and ejaculation ever again, because when we are doing so, we are spilling the power in us, we are spilling the creative force in us. So we are going to stop doing so by eliminating the fornicating selves. And we are going to start making this energy ascend through our spine to, as I was saying, regenerate the physical, the vital, create the astral, mental, and causal. When we have these five bodies fully created, we are going to have already a human soul. This work is this work of creating these five bodies is the work of the first mountain. In the Phase B lectures, I was saying, we explained that in detail. And when we already create a human soul, that is that we are real men. Now, when we are faced with the decision of the path, we are going to be asked there if we choose the path of the nirvana or the direct path. And if we are one of those that, well, out of 100 person that gets to that point, 999 chooses the nirvana, they betray their Christ. But if we are the revolutionary one and we choose the direct path, which is the narrow and difficult path that almost no one take, but if we are there and we choose that path, then as we are already men, real men, the Son of Man, which is the Christ, can be born in us. Why? Because now, as we have a human soul and we choose the direct path, we can join our body, which is our divine soul. And it's at this point. And from the union of the human and the divine, then the Christic force can be born. The Christ is born from the union from the human and the divine, from the union of those two souls. That is called the perfect matrimony. There, the Christ is born. If we don't previously become men, it is not possible for the Son of Man to be born. So there, at that point, we are going to be living the Christmas of our hearts. And well, it is useless not to have it incarnated. We do nothing by following the messenger and not the message. Every time that we go to sex and we pour out our sexual energy, we are pouring out a Christic force. And when we understand this and we start doing this work, we are actually in this way to achieve the self-knowledge, to develop ourselves internally through this practice of the three factors, and we will undoubtedly be developing the Christ in us, and we are going to, at some point, live this. The tree of the Christmas tree is actually a representation of our spinal column, with all their chakras and all the virtues that are hung there. That is actually the Christmas tree. And the gift, or the important part, is the Christ in the Christmas. And well, the six-pointed star that is in the top of the Christmas tree is actually this six-pointed star that is when it is formed by the human soul and the divine soul. The human soul is a triangle that goes up, and the divine soul is a triangle that goes down. If you see the two figures that they formed that six-pointed star that is in the top of the Christmas tree. And if you reflect on this is all representing something internal. The Christmas is something that must be lived in our interior. And well, as you can see here, although Christ is born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, it is useless if he is not born in our hearts as well. And well, when the Christ is born in us, that Christic fire is going to transform us. The advent of the Christic fire is the most important event of the life of a person. When the Christ is born in a person and it's developed in his interior, that Christic force comes and takes over all the internal processes of the person, all the motor processes, the mental, the emotional, the instinctive, the sexual process. They will be managed by this Christ consciousness. And well, there the person goes and starts the works of the second mountain, that, as I was saying, is the whole work of the Christ. And among the works, well, the second and the third mountains. And among the works that the intimate Christ comes to do in us are the elimination of the seven causal selves, or the seven heads of legion, or also known as the capital sins. I think it is. And for example, in Egypt, they are known as the red demons. And well, this is like what the Christ must do in that second mountain. And as I was saying, they are represented by the labors of Hercules. The 9 first labors of Hercules represents the works of the Christ in the second mountain, and the last 3 works of Hercules represents the 3 last works of the third mountains. And well, in that process, the Christ is going to save the world. He's going to save our inner worlds. That Christic force is going to make the apocalypse in us, which is the destruction by fire of all of our inferior nature, of all of that ego inside ourselves, that are all those beasts and stuff that we like read in the apocalypse. All of that is inside ourselves, and all the apocalypse is actually a process that is going to be lived in our interior, and that is that fire, the Christ, that is going to come and eliminate all of that. So we get clean and we go out from that process, or we resurrect without a trace of ego, becoming real beings of light. Actually, now you hear a lot about well, I'm a being of light, or the beings of light. But actually, not everyone is a being of light. Yes, it's true that we all have a 3% of free and conscious essence that is light in us, but that is just a very, very tiny things, thing in us. We come to be real beings of light when we finish this work and we get to eliminate all of our ego. And all of us can do this work, and all of us can do this work in a single existence. Okay, so the thing is that we start from now on to self-observe, to get to know ourselves, to get to value our sexual energy. So we get to there comes a day in which we can see or live that Christmas of our heart, and let that individual Christ to be born in us and let that Christ develop in us so we get to one day come to be part of the universal Christ. And well, that is the information that I have for you for today. I know that this information can be new to you, but well, this is something that is important to show humanity about. And it's important that you start reflecting on all this information, and that you start like also corroborating this information with your inner being, so you get to see if this is really the path, and you start like traveling the path. Okay. And well, this has been today's lecture, and I want to invite you to our next lecture that we are going to be studying on Friday. And on Friday we are going to talk about the law of the pendulum. Well, I forgot, and now in the last slide, I had like a little list of some Christ that have existed in this race. And well, we have here like many of them. And the reality is that you can, in a conscious astral projection, call any of these Christs, and you can corroborate this information with them. You can get to see if they are really Christs by seeing their sword. If someone, when you like invoke that person, if that person have in the right hand a sword that is of gold or that is of light, is already a Christ. If it is of gold, he's working or he's doing his work or her work in the second mountain. And if it is a sword of light, like the Star Wars swords, like that, they are actually masters who already are working on the third mountain, or that already are self-realized masters. Someone that has in his or her right hand a silver sword is because it's working on the first mountain. And if the person on the other side has a sword or something like that in the left hand, then he is a initiate but of the Black Lodge. Okay, so it's like the inverse. It's a black magician. So you need to know that. And if the person doesn't have a sword at all, then that means that he's not working with his sexual energy, either up or down. He's not working at all with the sexual energy. And well, here you see like Yeshua ben Pandira, which is the real name of Master Jesus. You have John the Baptist. You have, well, the names here are in Spanish, but actually you can get some of them. Dante Alighieri, Platon, yeah, Hermes Trismegistus, Buddha Gautama, Krishna, Lao-tse, Zoroastro, Mahoma, Paracelsus, Fulcanelli, Nicholas Flamel, Moria. Well, there's like certain Christ here. You can, well, I'm going to post this in the page, so you have this information in case you want in the astral to investigate these persons and corroborate this information. And well, for example, here Maria is asking us about Saint Augustine. Well, actually, I don't know if Saint Augustine achieved the Christification, but you can get to put that as an objective to investigate in the conscious astral projection, to get to see if he is already a Christ, if he already self-realized. Okay, so you can investigate that. And well, this has been all for today. Thank you very much to all of you who are here receiving this information. If you at any point have any question, remember that I'm available to help you with anything that I know. Okay, so let me see. You have San Agustin. Let me see. San Agustin. Where is it? Yeah, he is here. Yeah, it's San Agustin is, yeah, it's the same. San Agustin. Okay, but yeah, here you have it. But anyway, you can go and you can check it in the astral, because I haven't talked with all these masters. I hope so. And well, sometimes we go to and talk with one or two or three, but if you have someone who is like important for you, or that you have received any information from them, or that some of them, for example, I know Master Samael, I know Master Rabalu, I know about Jesus, about Dante Alighieri, the same. All of this information can corroborate it. I want to talk with Buddha. I haven't, but that would be something beautiful to do. But we are going to be doing so as we have the opportunity. Okay, so the thing is that you encourage yourself to investigate this information. Yes, I'm going to post this information there in the page, so you investigate this. And well, thank you very much to you, and this is all for today. See you the next time. Ciao, ciao.